the World Economic Forum has announced 100 new startups joining its technology pioneers community. The 1024 Tech Pioneers is a group of early to growth stage companies focused on applying breakthrough in innovation to help shape the world's shared future. Now, as far as the African continent is concerned, out of the 100 entrants, we're going to be focusing on 4 that were included from Africa. So here they are. It's Basigo, which is from Kenya, Kapu, which is from Kenya as well. So I got Kapu, I got Kenya. Kapu, which is also from Kenya. Jetstream Africa, which is from Ghana, and U-Lesson Education, which is from Nigeria. Joining us from Geneva to discuss further is Verena Kuhn. She's the head of Innovator Communities at the World Economic Forum. Verena, thank you so much for joining us, and good afternoon to you. So can you first tell us about the concept of the Technology Pioneers community?
Yes, thank you so much, Rhodos. Really excited to be with you on Arise News and talk about the Technology Pioneer community. As you know, the World Economic Forum is the international organization for public-private collaboration with the mission to improving the state of the world. So what that means practically is that we're trying to engage the private sector in tackling really important problems that the world is facing, such as climate change or providing sustainable education, food, and healthcare for ever-growing population. And when you look at these challenges, for many of them, we don't have a solution yet. And that's why innovation is going to be really important to help us tackle these issues. And we believe that this innovation is not only going to come from big companies, but it's actually going to come from a lot of small companies, from disruptors, from startups. And that's why every year, since 24 years now, we choose early stage startups that we believe are going to have an overproportional impact and can really help us in trying to achieve this mission of improving the state of the world. And yesterday we announced the 2024 cohort. We're very excited about this cohort, and we're looking forward to working with them. They're going to work with us in our initiatives around the year for the next 2 years.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, you got 100. We can't go through all 100. So we decided to just focus on Africa. I just wanted to remind our viewers that this is from around the world. You pick from, Europe, Asia. But for the African continent, just looking at those 4 companies, I guess starting with Basigo, can you talk us through the business models of each of them?
So for me, Basigo is really probably the best one to illustrate what this is about. Climate change is top of mind for everyone, right? And we know that transport is a huge source of emissions. About 1/5 of global CO2 emissions are driven by transport, and a lot of that comes from public transport. At the same time, there's a big need to provide sustainable, accessible transport solutions to everyone. And in Nairobi, the private buses, they're really important means of transportation. We also obviously know that Africa has a fast-growing population, so this is going to become something that's much more important. And what Basigo is doing is looking at these 2 things and say, how can we find a transport solution that is cleaner, that is affordable, and it is also much more accessible. And so what they're offering electric buses with safe batteries, and also with a network of charging stations and maintenance stations. And at the same time, they're also offering a model of pay as you go for the drivers to enable more people to be able to afford these electric buses. And the impact that they've had already is really significant. They're growing very quickly, so we're particularly excited. They're already the biggest transport bus provider in Africa, and so we're excited to see where they're going to go over the next two years.
Thank you for that. And it's interesting that Kenya has 2 entrants from Africa. Can you also talk about Kapu as well, what they're doing?
Yeah, everyone's talking about how the everyday costs are going up, right? And so Capo is an online commerce business that really tries to tackle the everyday costs. They're focusing on few groceries mostly, and they're trying to bring down the cost by also building the local business. So we were also really excited about Capo's business model.
Great. And then over to Ghana, Jetstream Africa. I think they're in logistics. Can you talk about what they're doing?
Yeah, so they're really using 2 things that are top of mind for everyone. So they're using digitalization and AI to simplify the process of transporting and finance import, and also export cargo through Africa's supply chain. So they're really modernizing, digitizing the supply chains, and also using all the advances that we've seen over the last years in AI to become more efficient in that. They're going to engage in our trade tech portfolio. We're really excited to bring them on board.
Fantastic. Well, I'm in Nigeria, and of course, Nigeria had to be in that top 4. So can you talk about ULesson, and I guess what they're doing? I think they're in education.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, we talked about a growing population. We talked about very young population. And we also talked about models to provide a sustainable and modern education for the many. And ULesson really is pioneering the field. They have a library of video lessons and quizzes for primary and secondary school students. Offering a very accessible way of getting first-class education to everyone, and using all the advances, again, that we see in things like artificial intelligence and personalization to ensure that it's a great experience and hopefully also a fun experience for students.
Certainly, certainly. Now, Verena, thank you so much for taking us through the 4, but I do want to ask you about the importance of governments to create enabling environments for startups to thrive. So I guess I want to go back to Basigo because of what's happening. And funny enough, on our flagship morning show, which just ended before the Global Business Report, on the business segment, we had a long conversation about the need for Nigeria to have an electric vehicle ecosystem that can thrive. And we were looking at what's going on in Kenya, but also an announcement that was just made yesterday. A Chinese company, a battery maker for electric vehicles, announcing a $1.3 billion battery gigafactory in Morocco. That's Goshen. That's the name of the company. Yeah. So, Morocco has, I think its automotive sector, almost $14 billion in exports. A number of companies have announced electric vehicle initiatives in Morocco. They're really moving forward. Can you, and this was, their government also made the joint announcement as well. Can you speak to the importance, whether it's electric vehicles or education or logistics, or for governments to provide an enabling environment?
I think I'll speak about 3 areas. I think the first one already is to avoid making things difficult and doing harm, right? And a lot of times that is connected to permitting. So making sure that when new technology comes, they can give us significant improvements, that you actually enable people to be able to use that technology. I think everyone knows about Uber and how sometimes cities decide Uber is banned. That's a pretty basic example, but that can also happen to much more sophisticated technologies. And I think in Rwanda, we had a fantastic example. What an important role policy can play in actually enabling technologies, because for flying things for the longest time, permitting was focused on set technical standards where you said an airplane has to look like this and that in order to be able to fly. Now, obviously, with technologies like drones, where things change so quickly, such set standards don't make sense. So a couple of years ago, the World Economic Forum was piloting a new policy approach where basically the licensing and permitting for drones was based on performance standards rather than set technical standards. And that was very successful, piloted in Rwanda, and it has been rolled around the world. So, making sure that the government, that it provides policies and an environment where you can use technologies and you don't sort of hinder the use of technologies, that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. Then the second thing is, that can be done in different ways. We can think about incentives, right? I think one of the incentives that always needs to happen is investment. So trying to incentivize investments in specific areas. I think electric mobility is a very good example for that. But then there can be also other things that the government can do to sort of foster the use of a certain technology. And again, I think electric mobility is a good one. We need the infrastructure in order to be able to use electric mobility. So we need charging stations. We need charging stations, especially for buses to long distance. Or also we need to have charging spaces to enable private citizens to use electric mobility. That could be, for instance, done by having policies that foresee if you build a new apartment building, there needs to be a charging station in there. So these are the 2 things that the government, or some 2 examples actually, that the government can do to incentivize the use of new technology. And then a third topic that I always find comes up when you talk about highly innovative company is obviously also talent and the ability for talent to move around, right? So sometimes you will need experts that come from other countries. I think Africa is already much more flexible than other regions, but that is also a topic where government can sort of provide policies in an environment where you provide mobility to people and to experts.
It's been great having you on the show. Thank you so much for talking to us about this new announcement from the World Economic Forum, the 2024 entrance into your tech pioneer communities. Verena Kuhn, head of Innovator communities at the World Economic Forum, joining us from Geneva. Thank you so much for your time.